Welcome back to the show. This is Gdanian. You are on Sets and Reps. Another week, another episode. Here we are. I'm talking to myself today about a few different things, motivational tips that kept me going during the pandemic, barriers for success, playing the long game for success. This is one of those episodes. This is the first of many of my motivational type episodes. I don't want these to all start sounding the same, but these are going to be good tips for people, and honestly, they helped me a ton. Also going to talk a little bit about what I feel the word potential means. That's towards the end of the episode. So yeah, sit back, relax, enjoy, and thank you for coming to the show. What a crazy year. And I feel like the new year is just flying by. January is almost over. At the time I'm recording this podcast, my birthday is in 4 days and I'm turning 22. And that's wild to me. I'm just grateful and blessed to have made it this far. I can think about my past, my childhood, and the differences between where I'm at now and where I was in high school. And like I said, I'm just grateful. I think I'm a changed person for the better. And I'm moving forward in life, which is the important thing. But for a lot of people, they are still recovering in the wake of the monsoon that was 2020. Some people lost a lot. I can think in my head of two particular rappers that lost their lives. And these gentlemen were close in age to me. Rest in peace, Pop Smoke and King Von. I didn't listen to King Von's music too much, but I know that he was passionate and he was gone too soon. So rest in peace. And Pop Smoke really had that energy, had that vibe, and his voice, he sounded a lot like 50 Cent. And it was really sad to see that go and the way that it did. But some positive things came out of 2020 for a lot of people. And 2021 is going to be an opportunity not only to start fresh, but to build upon the things that you started in 2020. For me, it was this podcast, and not just thinking about wanting to do it, but actually stepping off the doorstep and doing it. And now it's just time to be consistent every single week, every Friday. It used to be every other Friday, but now episodes are going to come out weekly. And unfortunately, not unfortunately, we want to remain positive, but school is starting in 9 days. So if I find that I'm not going to be able to stay super consistent with it every single week, then we'll go back to every other week, but that's not going to be a very bad thing. You have to do what you can within your circumstances. It reminds me a little bit of the shutdown, the COVID shutdown. My work was closed for about 2 months. And as you know, I work at a gym. And that's the source for self-improvement, especially in the terms of lifting weights and achieving your goal, whatever it is in there. But I was forced to do home workouts, and that's really not something that I'm designed for, because I can be stuck and I can be unmotivated at times. And so in those 2 months, that was really kind of a down point for me. My workouts consisted of me having to physically leave my house to go to the track that I live about 2-3 minutes away from. And I would do sprints around the track and some body weight workouts. And I actually had a TRX suspension trainer, and I would hook that up to the bleachers and I would do my workouts there. In terms of work, I would try to stay consistent by training clients virtually once or twice a week, depending on their availability. And that was working. Although it was slightly discouraging because a lot of my client base that I had before the shutdown fell, I'm sure, and of course I don't know, but I'm sure that they fell into a little bit of a slump themselves, and I didn't hear from them. So obviously blessings and positive energy to all those people. I don't want to wish anything on anybody, of course. That's not why I brought it up. But people can be scared, and because of isolation and because of what's happening in the world, and I don't blame you. But the positive thing you can do is just that, be positive and stay away from the negativity. So if social media is something that's not letting you grow because you're focusing on the nonsense that's going on, then cut it out for a while. I mean, I got rid of Instagram for about 2 weeks, and I stopped using Facebook altogether, a while before that. And I've since gotten back into Instagram for the point of promoting this podcast, for which I feel it's a useful tool. But I'll find myself just scrolling through stories and just seeing, especially, just things happening in our society and in our communities, and people not necessarily doing anything to change or to make a difference, but they're just posting about it. And why would I sit and absorb that? So I've started to read a lot more. One of my goals for the new year was to finish one book each week. It's kind of tough for some people. I found that if I spend some time reading before I go to bed, not only do I get better sleep, but I just kind of cut through these books that I'm reading. I'm reading a few different ones, actually. Real quick, I can just go over which ones that I'm reading. I'm reading one called Samurai Wisdom Stories, and I'm also going through a book called Shogun, which is a historical fiction novel written by James Clavell, and it's really interesting. It's almost like reading something written by J.R.R. Tolkien, but it's based on true things and true people groups that happened, and it's really got me inspired to one day go and visit Japan. So I think that would be a nice long-term goal. But just dialing back real quick to that 2-month shutdown, I had started off by being severely productive and doing a lot to make sure I don't falter in my ways. And that didn't last very long, unfortunately, because as I said, I can kind of get into a downward spiral of procrastination, the P word, and a little bit of laziness too, which is terrible. And I would just start to doubt myself and start to question myself, and how can I motivate other people as a trainer if I can't motivate myself? I would just, before going to bed, I would just watch movies and watch shows and stuff, and it's still something that I do now a little bit, I'll admit. And then I would just wake up right in the morning and do it again for like an hour and a half, and not even get out of bed. And then I would just feel sluggish for that day. So the first step to kind of combat that, I've been getting up out of bed and moving around, and that's increased my productivity severely. So, but we don't know what's going to happen in the future with another shutdown. I have no idea. And the things that I'm going to cover in this podcast are things that I wish that I stayed consistent with during the first shutdown. That would have helped me a ton and would have been severely beneficial for my mental health. And for all of you listeners, I want to make sure that you're equipped in case there is another shutdown. So I'm going to start by talking about my best ways that I can stay motivated, stay productive. And I have a few different points. I mentioned in the morning, when I wake up, I would just stay on my phone and watch videos. Still something I do a little bit. But there's a point where I start to feel that warmth, that okay, you gotta get up, you gotta start moving around, you gotta do something. And so I think the very first thing that you do in the morning is really important. And so if you're tempted to kind of grab the phone, it's okay to check a few things. Maybe try not to spend more than, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes. For a lot of people, especially if it's early in the morning, it helps a lot of people wake up if they start watching things and looking at stuff. But it's even better if you were to get up and make your bed, because making your bed it has a few different benefits. For one, at the end of the day, it's always nice to come into your room and you just see that nice, neat bed, the blanket spread out in a very positive way. And then when you get into bed finally to sleep and lay your head on the pillow, it's just welcoming because it's there from when you made it in the beginning of the day. And then that's one task that you've accomplished. And I've talked about like chemicals in your brain before on this podcast. I'm not a scientist yet. I haven't finished my bachelor's degree in exercise science, but there's certain chemicals that start to flower up in your brain when you do things, when you complete things, when you accomplish a task. So making your bed the first thing in the morning is absolutely severe for setting your day, for just being on top of everything. So making your bed. Also, writing lists is a really good way to stay on target, especially if you have a lot of things you need to do. Writing them out on paper, getting them out of your head onto the page is crazy, because not only because as you complete those things, you can check them off, and wow, it's like, wow, I have 8 things on my list. I checked off 4 now. I'm already halfway through. And it's a way that you can kind of hype yourself up to complete the rest of the tasks. This is especially helpful on my days off, because if I have a lot of free time, that's a lot of free time that's useful. And so instead of wasting it, I can make lists and I can get things done that I don't ordinarily have a lot of time to do. And so that can be severely helpful for me. And again, just like I said with making your bed, it's something that you can accomplish, and it gets those chemicals firing up in your brain. Now, not only should you make your bed, but I also feel that it's important to keep your space clean. And that's your bedroom, that's your kitchen, that's your car, especially. My car can get pretty dirty if I leave it. And whether that's empty water bottles, I'm a big proponent of empty water bottles. They end up on the floor of my car. They end up in the center console. They're everywhere, man. And if I'm getting food to eat, sometimes I'll leave the wrapper or the container somewhere. So it's always helpful to have a plastic bag in the car. That way you can kind of bag up the trash that's there. And if you get home after being out, you can take that bag and you can go and put it in the trash can, or you can leave it in your car. I hook the loops around the shifter, and I'll open it up and just toss things in there if I need to throw them away. That way, if I have a lot of trash that accumulates, I can just get rid of it all in one swoop. And it's perfect. But keeping your space clean helps keep your mind clean. If there's a lot of clutter, I encourage you to take a moment, sit down in your room. Going back to books that I've read, just briefly, I mean, one of my favorite authors is Jordan Peterson. And he's got a lot going on when it comes to self-improvement, making meaning, and aiming higher. And so one of the things that I've kind of gleaned from him is he mentioned one little exercise that you can do is just sitting into your room and taking a look around and asking the question, what can I make better about this? What can I do to clean this up? And the act of asking yourself that question will start to bring things to your mind, or things will start to pop out at you. For example, you may look at your bookshelf and be like, wow, that's pretty dusty. And so you can stand up and you can dust that off. That's one thing done. Wow, I've got clothes all over the floor. You can start doing some laundry. So I encourage you to try that out as a little exercise. And one thing I started doing more of is putting dates in my calendar and setting reminders for myself. That helps you to give yourself a little bit of a schedule and gives you some discipline. Really good for getting things done, being productive, staying motivated. That's what I'm talking about. And then setting alarms as well. And you can set more than one alarm. I have to wake up pretty early on the weekends for my shift at the club, the health club. We're not popping too many bottles unless they are plastic and they have water in them. LOL. But you have to sometimes set multiple alarms because I have to wake up at 6-ish. So sometimes I'll set one for 5:50. And if I'm not feeling it, I will go back to bed for another 5 minutes and my alarm at 6:50 or 5:55 will go off. And then sometimes I have one that's up at 6:01 going off. So just setting multiple alarms in case one of them doesn't work out the first time. We're all human. That bed feels really good in the morning when you have to get up. And it's almost like you're magnetized to it. So having multiple alarms just in case one doesn't go the best is definitely a good thing for you to do. I want to talk a little bit about instant gratification versus the long game for success. Now, each one of us is on a different path, right? Maybe we are working towards, maybe some of you are still in high school, you're working towards getting through that, graduating. You've got your whole life ahead of you. Maybe some of us are in a job and we're working on getting promoted. For myself, I'm going through college right now, and I'm in my almost done with my first year. I have one more year for this associate's PTA program, and that involves putting many hours and many days into studying for the end goal of passing and receiving my degree. And that's the long game. And things can start to get in your way. Things that may or may not contribute to that long game. And those things will sometimes make you happy right away. That's that instant gratification, but they won't necessarily build you up. And so an example of that would be, spending a lot of time playing video games, which is something I personally struggle with. I wouldn't say struggle with, but I'm starting to find a balance between doing it to relax and doing it to unwind from the day versus doing it to avoid doing other things. Now, when you get into avoidance, that can be really tricky because things will start to pile up. You will have deadlines that you need to meet. And when there's a deadline, that usually puts a fire right where the sun don't shine, and it gets me moving. But other times I'll almost revert to doing things to avoid it, like video games, spending too much screen time. I think that these are barriers to productivity, and they may gratify you or distract you in the moment, but they won't necessarily build you up, and they won't contribute to that long game. So finding a balance. Balance is a buzzword for this episode. Definitely, for sure. Another thing that can help you with that long game for success is journaling and taking notes. And it's almost a form of tracking your progress. This can be writing blog posts. Some people do that. It can be writing articles. It can be writing stories. All throughout my life, I actually enjoy writing fiction novels. Nothing that, gets anywhere close to being able to be published. But it's still something that kind of is a fun way for me to get my brain juices flowing and enhance my creativity. Right now, I'm actually working with two of my friends on a new project, and I can tell you a little bit about that. It involves it takes place kind of at the end of the Middle Ages and before magic and in the terms of doing tricks to entertain people, before that actually becomes a thing. This is like a tiny tangent, just to sidetrack a little bit. There is this individual, Reginald Scott, in history. Now, we don't know much about, but we decided in the spirit of historical fiction, we would take some creative license. But in truth, he wrote a book called The Discovery of Witchcraft, which I think would be important for me and my friends to read if we want to make a plausible story. It should be grounded in reality. But anyways, he goes on a journey with a couple of his friends. He's a college student and he is about to graduate. And again, this takes place in 1540 AD, if I'm not mistaken. So they're traveling to Arabia to look into this thing called high magus, and it's a form of magic, and a couple of his friends believe in magic and it's real power, and he is not convinced. He's like, we do tricks, we do party tricks to entertain people, and he makes a bet with his friend and says, if magic is real, you win the bet, and if it's not real, then I win. And this it leads to him eventually writing this book, Discovery of Witchcraft. But while they're on their journey to Arabia, they get messed up and they get lost, and they somehow get transported to this magical world where real magic takes place. So it's the idea that this guy who does party tricks is kind of transferred into this place where there's real stuff going on. So it's going to be very interesting. But all that to say, writing and getting your ideas, getting your things out onto paper, spending a little bit of time on it every day is another tip to help you stay productive. But when you write for the purpose of tracking your progress, you can take a look back at it and you can say, hey, this is how far I've come. This is how many days I've spent logging my calories, my food. This is how many days I've spent writing my story. This is how many days I've spent studying. This is how many hours I've spent studying. Whatever it is, whatever you're writing, doesn't matter. Just do it. You'll feel a lot better for it. I know that I certainly do. And I did. And that leads me a little bit into the healthy habits and healthy routines. That's having healthy routines helps you build discipline. I can't talk today. Helps you build discipline. Keeps you on kind of a rigor. everything I mentioned in the beginning of this podcast could be taken and made into a habit. Whether it's the writing dates in the calendar, whether it's making lists, completing the list, whether it's making your bed or keeping your space clean, setting alarms. These are all things that you can do as habits and routines, and they're things that you can do every single day. The name of this podcast is Sets and Reps. I believe that life is made up of one giant set, bunch of sets, whatever. But every single day you got to put in the reps, and you can't get results unless you put in the reps. So when you're at the gym and you're working out, sometimes you can be super motivated. You can get the entire thing done, and that's great. Other times you can kind of get stuck in a loop where you're feeling tired, and you kind of get stuck in that mental space where you're starting to feel it, and it's like, I don't know if I can continue. One of the things that I found that's really helpful for me when I get into that space is positive self-talk, so that I know I won't give up. And talking to yourself in a positive way, whether it's hyping yourself up, it's almost like having a trainer with you, pushing you. And I know the kind of things that I say to my clients, and I know the things that help them. And so I use that as kind of a poke or a jab at myself to get myself through the workout and to finish it. So one tip that I do is counting down from the top rep instead of the first rep. You know what I mean? I mean, if you're doing bicep curls and you're doing 12 reps and you're getting to that 6th rep, and it's the weight that you're using is moderately heavy, so you're starting to feel that pump, you're starting to feel that burn, you don't know if you can get through. So instead of continuing 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, I start to count down, and I will go, okay, 6, 5, 4, 3, and counting down like that makes it, okay, I'm looking down at the goal, I'm getting closer to it, I'm closer to it, I'm closer to it, instead of up, higher and higher, it's almost there. So I feel that if you're going down towards that number, it helps get you through it a lot more. And when you're talking to yourself in this positive way, you can almost just think to yourself, okay, am I really this tired, or is this just my brain playing tricks on me? And that's a way that you can almost play with your psychology a bit. Now, this positive self-talk is tremendous for mental health, but there can be times where we have negative self-talk that's almost impulsive, meaning we can't necessarily control how we initially respond to a situation, whether it's something that you're involved in with another person, or something that you've been thinking about for yourself, something that you've been kind of stuck obsessing over. A classmate of mine once said something that was really cool to me. They said, you can't always control your initial response, your initial thought, but you can also always control your second thought. I'm going to say that again. You can't always control your initial thought, but you can control your second thought. And I thought that was really positive and really uplifting. Because sometimes we can be really jerks to ourselves, Sometimes we are stuck in self-doubt, not necessarily backing ourselves up. You got to be in your own corner. At the end of the day, you might be the only one that cares about you enough to move yourself forward into a positive space. We're all that we've got sometimes. So like I said, even if you can't control that initial first thought of doubt or guilt or anger, whatever it is, You can always control your second thought. And it's hard. It's hard. I'll say that, to do that, because it's almost the easy way to just give in and let your mind go to those places. But to actually redirect the patterns in your brain and think positively and say, this might actually benefit me in a way that maybe I'm not necessarily seeing right now. So I'm just going to trust this process. I'm going to stay in it for a little while longer. Or you can say, even though that meeting didn't go quite the way that I wanted, I have an opportunity to do a little bit better next time, or I'm going to work harder to make sure that I pass that test the second time when I retake it. You know, it's little things like that that I feel are tremendous. Now, information in and information out. If you are constantly, it goes back to what I was saying in the beginning about just kind of scrolling through social media and getting bogged down by the things that are going on in the world around us. If you're constantly feeding yourself that negativity, then how can you expect to have positivity? If you are constantly watching something that's, you know, not great for your mind, a lot of people love horror movies. I'm intrigued by them. But for some people, they can be like triggering. You know, depends on who you are. It's okay to not like horror movies. It's an underrated approach. Because if you're just watching things about demons and serial killers all the time, it's really not super good for your mental health. And so switching it up, reading a lot more instead of spending that time watching your movies, watching your shows that gratify violence or gratify dark elements. Just make the switch up and see how it benefits you in a positive way. So I want to kind of bring this all together by talking about the word potential. This can mean a lot for different people. Potential is essentially the end result of that thing that gets you excited. That thing that you think about that gets those chemicals going in your brain and says, oh boy, I can't wait to do this again. I can't wait to keep working on this. I feel that potential is activated or assumed when you put the time in to achieve it. So let's say we're talking about your physical potential, your physique, for example. You're doing a bodybuilding show and you have a goal weight that you need to get to. You've got to get down to that 175 body weight, whatever. You've got to lose your water weight. You've got to shred, get to the point where you're ready to walk on stage and you're ready to kill it. That's your potential. You need to unlock that potential by putting in the reps every single day. Sets and reps. It's the name of this podcast. But I really like that idea of getting excited about it. It's almost like the butterflies in your stomach or the goosebumps. I challenge you, or I encourage you to find that thing that gets you pumped up, gets you saying, hey, I want to keep working on this. I want to get better. I want to get stronger. and stick with it. Because most likely, if it's making you feel this way, it's the right place for you to be. So we're going to wrap up here. But I want to just kind of sum up everything that I've mentioned so far. We've got tips to stay motivated, writing lists, completing those lists, making your bed as part of a healthy habit, healthy routine, cleaning your space as part of healthy routine, setting alarms, putting dates in your calendar, all things that are going to lead to your success. Remembering the importance of the long game and not getting sucked up into things that will make you happy for the moment or distract you for the moment. Not giving up when you are in that pathway. You're doing those reps. You have to get to 10. So count back down. Get 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So that you know you're close to the finish line. And figuring out your potential, that thing that gets you excited, gets you, I want to kill this, I want to do it. That warm feeling inside that you get, that excitement. Thank you so much for listening to Sets and Reps. I will see you next time. Please make sure to check out the YouTube channel. Right now, it's just my first name and last name, Greg Gdanian, Gdanian. New episodes every Friday, and we've got shorter segments of that episode. Those always come out on YouTube. The podcast is also on Spotify, audio version. Eventually, we're going to do video version, but we'll have to get a better webcam and a better setup for that. So those are all exciting things in the future. Right now, I can feel that potential that I was talking to just about. I can feel that excitement because this is something that I know is going to get bigger, and it's something that I know I want to work on. And